You're listening to 94.4 FM Salford City Radio, the Friday Sports Show.
You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports Show with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi, bringing you news from the local area and around the world. And we're very fortunate in this show to have guests in sport, the highest level of sport, well, also all levels of sport, but we've spoken to some of the world's best people in many different sports, many different roles in sport: coaches, trainers, participants, Olympic athletes, and footballers. We also have a segment where we speak to some of the world's most influential people in psychology and mental health. Be very kind enough to join the show and share their ideas. And on the show, we like to interview guests from around the world to give us an insight into what sport is like in different places around the world. And it's always fascinating to hear different sort of perspectives on sport and covering different sports as well. So today we're in for a really interesting interview. Antoinette Faye, who's an amateur boxing coach and Ireland's only two-star female boxing coach, is a huge achievement in itself. Antoinette, thanks for coming on board the show. Great to have you on board.
Hi Jimmy, how are you? I'm delighted to be here.
Absolutely, and I suppose in terms of yourself, you're a boxing coach. If we start from the beginning, Antoinette, how did it all begin for you? How did you become a boxing coach?
How did I become a boxing coach? I'd have to go back to my childhood. It all started with my dad, way back in the 70s. When I was growing up, women were not allowed to box. There was no women allowed in clubs and boxing clubs. Wow. If you walked into a boxing club, you'd be told to leave and go do Irish dancing or ballet and do things that girls do, because boxing is not for women. Yeah. So my dad taught me how to box in my kitchen at home growing up. I had 3 brothers. I used to box alongside them, but he always trained me in the kitchen. So my love and my passion for boxing actually started through my father. Introduced me to the sport. If we roll on many years later, I joined a local club where I lived to help out with the kids and do the administration work and that kind of stuff, and that's how it got me back into the sport after being many years out of it. Yeah. And the club sent me to train along as a national, or not as a national coach, as a club coach, because we have level 1 and level 2 and level 3 that you must complete in order to participate as a coach at club level. Mm-hmm. And that's where it all started for me. And as the time went by, I started to produce national champions. So I was invited along to train with our Irish national teams, our junior and youth and senior elite national teams. Now this is the very highest level. This is a high performance level in Ireland. Yeah. And in order to travel with those teams as a coach, you must complete a world body international coaching badge. Mm-hmm. You cannot enter the field of play in amateur boxing at international level unless you have these coaching badges. So of course you have to do the courses and you have to pass. And it's the international body that actually passes you. Actually, Terry Edwards was my tutor from my level 1 or from my 1-star. Wow. So I remember meeting him and he passed me at that level as a 1-star. Yeah. And then I got to learn and work alongside our high performance coaches, and by God was it a different level altogether, because you learn so much more than you do at club level. And from there then I was asked to do the 2-star. Yes. The 2-star, now I had to travel to Lviv in Ukraine. Yeah. And I spent 7-8 days over there, being constantly examined, going through different, strength and conditioning, boxing, as well as written exams, and I actually passed that. It was 8 weeks. It was very interesting, and you're with coaches from all over the world. Yeah. Now, there's only, God, if there's less than 20 women in the world that would hold a 2-star, and even less 3, which is the highest level. Wow. But it's great that I was able to attain that, because, as I said, I'm the only female coach in Ireland that holds this level.
Yeah.
And it's an achievement I'm actually very proud of.
Absolutely. No, it's really fascinating, Antoinette. I think what I find fascinating too is that you mentioned there in terms of yourself sort of growing up and the perception around women in boxing at the time, and I suppose in one sense it's almost like you're a sort of pioneer in terms of pursuing coaching and going into it. How have you been? How has it been sort of since then, your journey in terms of being a coach, and what's the reaction? Obviously, really well respected, no doubt about that. That's for sure. But what's changed over time? Do you think from when you first got involved and become aware of it to now in boxing?
What's actually changed is actually the participation of women, not only as athletes, but also women are no longer afraid to walk into a boxing club. It's not. You see, when I was growing up, it was you just couldn't go in. If you walked through the door, the whole place would stop, and they'd be wondering why you're standing there. There's no women allowed, and that this is a man's domain. It's for men only. It's a brutal sport. And it's no place for women. Women, do their cooking and their cleaning and their, do your little dance lessons and your little piano lessons. And, as I said, women back then were very much put into boxes. But my father always taught me to step outside that box and don't let other people determine what you can and cannot do and what you want to do or what you can and cannot achieve. And over the years, as the psyche around that, and as more women have come forward, and when you look at the likes of the Natasha Jonas and the Katie Taylors and all those girls from the past, even down to Amanda Coulson. Amanda Coulson is a fantastic coach with GB Boxing, but she was there boxing many years ago when there was no competition for female boxers. So it was kind of set up, these little bouts would be set up between the national governing bodies. So to see that kind of participation and more women coming forward, and they're no longer afraid to walk into boxing clubs. Fathers are now sitting at home going, my daughter is a boxer and she wants to box, let her go. She doesn't want to do this and she doesn't want to do that. Let's bring her to the local club and see how she gets on. And we have so many idols to look up to now, and so many women who have broken down them barriers in the past. That it's allowed women to come forward. It's given women a voice, and they're getting stronger and stronger on that platform. So the changes I've seen is although it's slow and there's still an awful lot more work to do, is the mindset of women do not belong in this sport. It's actually changing slowly and steadily, and the more focus that's put on women as either athletes in boxing or coaches, the better. It's inspiring a new generation coming through to think, I want to do that and I can do that and I can be as good as that.
Absolutely. And I suppose in one sense it has a knock-on effect too, maybe outside boxing. Do you feel that as well, Antoinette? Obviously, times have changed and we've seen women's football get more coverage and other sports too. Is that something that you're sort of conscious of too, or you just really focused on your own role and what you're doing? Because I suppose you could argue that you're not only breaking down barriers for boxing, but it has a knock-on effect in other areas as well.
Oh God, absolutely. It's great now to see when you're looking at Sky Sports and you see so many women who are now pundits on soccer or rugby or any other sport, tennis and stuff like that. It used to be just men that were giving the commentary. Now you actually see the athletes coming in, and the former footballers who used to represent their countries and stuff like that at all different levels coming in, and I think that's fantastic. Because as I said, not every woman who goes into sport is going to make it to the top, but if you see a young girl sitting looking at the telly and she's looking at a female pundit talking about a particular sport, that young girl could be that woman in the future, a journalist talking about sport. And it's great to see those doors opening, and I have to give credit to Sky Sports. They're very good at it.
Absolutely.
So they are, and they've really brought them forward. So you do have to tip your cap. It's also happening here in Ireland as well. You see more and more women talking about different sports and becoming pundits on sports, and that's something that you never would have seen in the 70s, the 80s, or even the 90s.
Absolutely,
It was unheard of, so it's not that long ago. So as I said, it's actually slowly changing, and women are coming forward, and they're getting more roles, and they're being given more chances and more opportunities, and they're taking, to drop the pun, they're taking the ball and running with it. It's great. I think it's absolutely fantastic, and may that long continue.
Absolutely, and what I find interesting as well, Antoinette, sort of Ireland, I suppose, I would say in sport, they sort of punch above their weight across a lot of sports in the sense, if we think about the population compared to some of the other countries, and seem to produce great athletes across a broad range there, irrespective of what sport you play against Ireland. You're in for a game, really. And is that sort of something that you sort of grew up with? Is sport and boxing a passion in Ireland, or just for our listeners who may not have experienced the passion that Ireland has for sport?
Oh, yes, no, it is, absolutely. Boxing is very, very much passion here in Ireland. As I said, the Olympics is now about to start, and the whole country will get behind our athletes, not just in boxing, but across the board, all our athletes. There's one thing that no matter where you travel around the world, you'll always get other nations and other cultures from other nations saying the Irish are born with tremendous heart, tremendous fighting spirit, and tremendous heart. When they get into sport, of course, the coaches, bring out the best in them and teach them the correct way of doing things and the technical and the tactical stuff. But it's their heart to step forward and keep going, and even when the odds are against them, they will still fight to the very end. If you look at our national sport, the GAA, it's massive.
It's amazing.
Absolutely massive. And Irish people all over the world, no matter where they are, if their county is playing, they will tune into it and watch it and support it from wherever they are in the world. And that's just how passionate they are about their national sport, which is GAA. But it's the same across the board with rugby and soccer and boxing.
Definitely, absolutely. And in terms of yourself, what would you say your highlights have been so far for you? No doubt you've had many highlights, Antoinette, but what would you say were some of the highlights you've experienced yourself?
One of as I said, one of the top highlights was to achieve what I have achieved, being a woman in a sport that's classed as a man's sport.
Absolutely.
It's not an easy road, and you do need, as I said, you need a hard neck and a thick skin to get to that level. So to achieve that 2-star was absolutely fantastic for me. I've represented my country on many international, European and world level stages, travelling with our national teams and bringing home medals and coming back to that. It's quite an honour, and to represent your country, to travel abroad and to represent your country, but to travel with these boxers who come from other clubs. Those coaches put their trust in you to look after them, especially when you're looking at junior and youth, because they're quite young, and to see them coming back and achieve, but to stand back and to watch that athlete stand on the podium and to hear your national anthem played and your flag raised is it's just the best. It would actually bring a tear to your eyes. So there's some of the best highlights that I've had in the sport of boxing.
Absolutely, and no, it's really inspiring. Sort of speaking to you, Antoinette, you sort of broken the odds, and in terms of, well, at least make a huge impact in the world of boxing. And from a perspective you've mentioned there, being a coach, woman sort of coach as well, have opened a lot of barriers. And what would you say some of the challenges have been for yourself on your journey, in terms of the experiences you've had? What would be the biggest challenges that you've faced, Antoinette?
The biggest challenges I've faced is actually the mindset of others.
Yes.
When you're on a particular journey like this, you're going to come across a lot of barriers, and there's an awful lot of good people in boxing, open-minded people, and people who are willing to support you, and people I love to learn from. I've met an awful lot of coaches across the world, and they're fantastic, and anybody who says they know everything, really doesn't know very much at all, because you're always constantly evolving and learning. But you are going to come across those, stuck in the past, and those kind of people who will try and insult you and say, you don't belong here, you're a woman. What would you know about boxing? This is a man's sport. Some of them are quite challenging, but you know, as I always say to people, and I'm a tutor as well, I actually coach coaches here in Ireland for the IABA. And when women come into the course, I do discuss this topic with them. And I always say to them, if you allow these people's opinion to impact on you, you're going to quit. And you're never going to get very far in life. This person's opinion that's his opinion. It's not an awful lot of others, and it shouldn't affect. You shouldn't put power into their hands to allow them to affect how you are, how you feel, what your goals are. If you're determined and you work hard enough, you'll get there. And don't let other people's old-fashioned opinions get in your way and try and stop you. Yes, it is hard. Yes, you have to push through. As I said, you know, a hard neck and a tough skin, but once you develop that, there's nothing going to stop you. So the biggest challenge is always the mindset of those who are kind of stuck in the past.
Absolutely. And I suppose you could sort of adopt that attitude that you mentioned there to anything in life, Antoinette. I mean, the training for me, obviously preparing boxers to be the best they can be, but life in general, I think you walk away from the boxing gym and you have that attitude, it can only be a good thing, really, because it's not easy, the world we live in. Sometimes people have got, you know, various opinions, and it can be tough, especially these days with social media and people put things on there and that. But do you find that it helps, the training helps people even, you know, outside the boxing environment to be more confident in themselves and you know, stand up sort of tall type thing?
Sorry, Jimmy, I've lost you again.
Sorry. Do you find that the training you do in the boxing gym helps people be more confident outside too?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Sorry, let's re-record. Do you find that the training you do, Antoinette, with the boxers helps them even outside the boxing arena in life in general, like to be more confident in themselves and more sort of focused?
Oh God, absolutely. I mean, boxing teaches you discipline, teaches you self-discipline. It also, you know, I find it increases your self-esteem. And it also improves the quality of life. But the disciplines that you learn in boxing, which is to, you know, work hard, suffer the losses, because you're not going to win everything. Do you know what I mean? And an awful lot of people need to learn how to accept a loss, to take the lessons from it, to use it, to improve, and to move forward and move on to the next level, not to let that loss stop them in their track. But to move on, because the next one could be a win, or the one after that could be a win. So it teaches you how to handle winning, which you do need to learn how to handle winning, but you also need to learn how to handle the losses in life, because, you know, life is hard, and you're going to get setbacks, and you're going to come across various problems, and to be able to have the discipline to deal with those issues, and to move forward,
absolutely,
is something that you learn in boxing. And you learn that from a young age when you're a child growing up, when through your local clubs, through your local coaches as well. So yes, I think the sport of boxing teaches you an awful lot, not only inside the ring, but how to deal with life outside the ring as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Now there's some really, you know, great points you've made there, and the sort of discipline too, I think, is huge. Really, the training and if you describe the training itself, I mean, boxing training for me, my limited experience in boxing training, it's obviously very challenging physically and also mentally. What would you say is the biggest challenge people have when they sort of come along to train? Is it the mental side of it, the physical side of it, or a bit of both, Antoinette?
Well, when somebody comes in at first, what they really find tough is the physical side of it. I don't think they realise how hard to train like a fighter actually is, and they have to use an awful lot of skills that they've never actually used before. Even, you know, throwing punches and learning how to throw the punches, but even something as simple as a skipping rope, something that everybody did as a child, when it comes to being an adult, they kind of forget how to skip. It's simple as things, but it's the actual physical side of it they don't realise exactly what it takes to train at a certain level. And that boxing training is really very hard. It's very physical. It's very demanding on the body, both on the aerobic and anaerobic side. So you're getting to work both sides within that training. But what I do find is that once they get through their first and second session, they actually fall in love with the training, and they always come back and they want to do more. And they train harder and they love it. They just fall in love with it. And once they get to a certain level where they're fit enough, then they start learning how to think. Because, you know, the art of boxing is a thinking man's game. It's not a brutal sport where two people stand and just, you know,
absolutely, yeah,
punch the head off each other. It's very much an intelligent sport, and it's a thinking man's game, and there's an awful lot involved in it. As I said, in the technical side of learning how to move properly, how to throw properly, how to anticipate what somebody might be throwing back at you. So it is a thinking man's sport. But at the start, it's always a physical challenge that people are hit with from the very start.
Absolutely. No, it's really interesting you're saying. I think that for anybody sort of, I sense it's obviously not just about, you know, it's being the best boxer you can be, but also the life lessons you can learn for taking up boxing can be huge as well. And yourself on your journey, Antoinette, what's your aspirations that you can share with the listeners in terms of where do you see yourself in terms of going forward in your own sort of career? What's your vision for yourself as a coach?
As a coach, well, as I said, I do train people in my own gym, and I still work with the national governing body. Yeah. I would love to be able to, of course, with the pandemic, everything is shut down, to actually finally get to that top level of becoming a 3-star coach. Yeah. But what I absolutely love is tutoring. Yeah. I love to see brand new coaches coming in and tutoring them and preparing them and putting them through their level 1s and their level 2s, and hopefully in the future what I would really love is to be able to work with IABA and become a tutor for them to coach other female coaches around the world, and to pass on my knowledge and to pass on what I know, and to help them take that extra step, give them the encouragement to move on and see what they do with that in their own countries in the future, to bring on the next generation. That's where I hope to see myself in a few years' time.
Brilliant. And in terms of, say, any sort of young person listening, or anyone at any age sort of listening and thinking, well, they're considering taking up boxing. I mean, my own personal experience, I'd sort of sometimes in the off season do a couple of months of sort of boxing to sort of, you know, keep or try and improve my fitness. Was probably the most challenging from a physical point of view. It was incredible, really, and taught me a lot. But I suppose if anyone's sort of thinking about sort of turning up, well, I don't know if you'll give advice really, but would you say if anyone sort of maybe that they might feel a bit intimidated going into the boxing gym? And I mean, I've always found most places really, you know, friendly and welcoming, and you just kind of get on with it. But in terms of your experience sort of being a coach, if any sort of one's listening thinking, well, I'd like to go down to a boxing gym, what would you say, Antoinette?
I would say absolutely. Just go down, go inside the door, ask to speak to one of the coaches, tell them you're interested in taking part and joining and just getting the training. You may not ever want to fight in the ring, but you want to do the training. Most gyms are very welcoming to new members, and not to be afraid to take that first step. It's amazing if you just take that first step. It's a whole world that's open to you. So it is, and you just don't know where that path will take you in the future. But it's just getting over that first initial, I don't feel confident enough to walk into a gym on my own. Just push open the door and go in. All gyms I find are very friendly, and they're very welcoming to new members, and they love to see new people coming through the door. Absolutely. So they do, and there's always somebody there to greet you. And 90%, 99% of the gyms now do have a mixture of male and female coaches there, so there's nothing to be intimidated. When you walk in, you're going to see girls training, you're going to see boys, you're going to see men, you're going to see women. But it's just for that person to take that first step. Absolutely. There's an old saying, as they say, you know, a good backhand will take you around the block, but a good jab could take you around the world. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's just taking that first step.
You know, definitely, and I suppose for many athletes, it's sort of a good opportunity for them to also improve their fitness or different type of fitness as well for them. Do you get that as well, Antoinette? We got athletes from different sort of codes. I know obviously these days at the highest level they've got coaches, trainers and tailored plans, but do you find you get athletes from other disciplines coming in to try and get sharper and more fitter and aerobically as well?
Oh, I do. Just before the pandemic hit, I had two brothers, and one was, I think he was 15, and the older brother was 17. They already play for Ireland at international level in football and soccer. Liam Brady is actually their manager, and they were busy going out to trials for Arsenal and Manchester United and Chelsea. Now they're connected with the Shamrock Rovers club here. They're going to be two superstars in the future, but they came to me to do the boxing training because it actually helped with their soccer.
Absolutely.
And they loved the training, yes. So that's from soccer. I also have amateur jockeys coming to me as well, both male and female. Not only does it help with their weight, because as you know, they have to keep their weight to a certain level, and I do find that the jockeys, when they hit the pads, are very strong because they've good strong legs from being on the horses. They absolutely love the training, so they do, and they love boxing, and they say it's very disciplined and it's great, and it's also a great stress release for them. Absolutely. As well. So I actually get a broad range of people from across many different sports. I have rugby players that come in, I have GAA teams that come in, and then of course the local under 12s and under 14 soccer clubs come in, and I put programs together to train them as well. And it's all boxing training. It's all skipping. It's all with their footwork. It's all with their thinking. It's all speed and stuff like that. And it's great. So it's not just for people who want to box.
Absolutely.
But a lot of athletes from across the board actually love the boxing training, and it enhances and helps them.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And for many years, certainly with my involvement predominantly in sort of football, I've always recommended the players in the off season, where they could go to the boxing gym, and the benefits of the training are phenomenal, really, in terms of they're very transferable to football, to soccer, obviously, in terms of footwork, fast feet, defending, and it's tremendous, really. And I think sometimes as well, Antoinette, the players are amazed at how intensive the training is, really. I think they sort of, especially the ones that experience it for the first time, the intensity is just incredible, really, in terms of the circuit training, the training. And do you find sometimes that some of the athletes who come in for the first time are surprised how intensive the training is?
Oh, absolutely. They're actually surprised. They'll say to me, God, I thought I was fit. Not compared to this. This is after killing me, and I thought I was fit. So it actually shows the gaps in where they need to improve their fitness level to do, full 90 minutes on the pitch. So it's great for that as well, but they are always quite surprised at how a 1 hour, just a 60-minute training session, absolutely floors them.
Yeah, no, definitely. And in terms of, say, like boxing, when you've got like an athlete competing in boxing, what's it like for them, for our listeners, when they sort of step in the ring, the adrenaline, and you're there and you face the opponent? What's the sort of feeling like mentally for the athletes? I mean, do you sort of speak to them mentally too, Antoinette, to sort of stay focused?
Oh, yes. Absolutely, you have to. The psychology part of boxing is very, very important, because the nerves can set in. Now, elite athletes at the highest level, when you're talking about the adults, are quite used to it because they have been in boxing all their lives, so they're used to competition, and a lot of them have their little triggers and how they relax before a fight. There's certain songs they listen to, there's certain warm-ups that they do, there's certain things. But when you're looking at, say, the underage boxers, sometimes it could be their first time away. They're national champions. It's their first time away on such a big stage. They're used to, say, our national stadium and boxing in the stadium. but they've never been in the big arenas, and that can be quite intimidating. And then all of a sudden they're in against, could be Russia or Germany or France. These are countries they've never met before, and it could be their first time. So the psychology before that is very important. You have to remember they're only young. Yeah. So getting them to settle their nerves and to talk to them. And every boxer is an individual, and they're all different. Mm-hmm. Some of them, you really need to light the fire in their bellies before they walk out to climb up them steps to step into that ring. And some of them, you just need to crack a few jokes and take their mind off it and get them settled. You've already gone through their tactics. They know what to do and what you expect of them through that first round. So you're trying to relax them, settle the nerves, and not let the big arenas and all the different countries around them unnerve them. So it depends on the boxer itself. As I said, every boxer is an individual, so there's no one slot fits all, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. No, absolutely, for sure. And I think that's a skill in itself, Antoinette. I think, like you've mentioned there, sort of boxing, it requires a lot of skills, and certainly the coach does, but that's a whole different skill in itself to be able to do that, which is phenomenal, really, to do. But it's been a really fascinating interview, Antoinette. I'm sure the listeners have really enjoyed and sort of taken a lot away from the actual interview itself. It's been very kind of you to sort of join us on the sports show. So I really want to thank you for joining us, and I wish you every success in the future. So thanks very much, Antoinette, for joining us on the Friday Sports Show. Great stuff.
No, thank you, Jimmy. It's been a pleasure, an absolute pleasure, and thank you for the invitation. I was actually quite honoured and humbled to be asked. So,
thank you. And that was Antoinette Faye, amateur boxing coach, Ireland's only two-star female boxing coach, giving us an insight into what it's like to be a coach, boxing, and all things boxing. Really, really fascinating interview. Really interesting and informative interview on the Friday Sports Show, Salford City Radio, 94.4 FM, with your host, Jimmy Petruzzi.